at the Mount, we are one. One faith, one seed, one family. Here are your weekly announcements. Great things are still happening as we forge forward with the 4 C's of creating, culturizing, connecting, and committing. So hold on and let's go. A new series has begun. Continue to join us each Sunday as we learn and grow through the preaching series, Cancel Culture. Check out the Beyond the Sermon podcast on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. with our Peacock Proud Pastor Rioland for great topics on lessons for living. Did you know that the Mount has its own prayer building? Stop by and check out all the services they offer. They will be open every Sunday, immediately following the worship service. In need of prayer? Join the Mount in Prayer conference call every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8:30 p.m. Trusting God through hard times. Ladies, you are encouraged to dial in every Thursday morning at 7 a.m. to the Women's Prayer Conference line for special prayer requests and blessings. Join our GAP ministry and let's talk about it on the first and third Thursdays at 7 p.m. Tune in this week on April the 6th to participate in Real Talk on the topic, Are you appeasing people and displeasing God? Good Friday service featuring the 7 last words will be presented on Friday, April the 7th at noon. Also, be sure to be in attendance on Sunday, April the 9th to experience the Resurrection Cantata at the 9 a.m. service. It's back! Beginning April the 16th, in-person Sunday school returns and will take place immediately following the 9 a.m. worship service. There will be classes for all ages. This concludes your weekly announcements. Sit back and prepare your hearts and minds to receive the Word of God. Let's go.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sister T. Pastor Rio is here, and welcome to this week's edition of Beyond the Sermon.
Well, good evening, man.
Good evening, Pastor.
Listen, for those, I'm sure you recognize this face. This is Sister Teresa. She's on our praise team. But so much more. She recently accepted her call to ministry, so she's a minister in training. A Sunday school teacher.
Yes.
Young adults. And when we come back in Bible to Sunday school, so welcome to Beyond the Sermon. Thanks for being with us. Last minute she jumped in for us, so we appreciate her today.
Absolutely, thank you so much, Pastor. So we are not going to prolong the time. We're gonna jump right on in. You ready?
Let's jump in.
All right. So we're gonna do a quick recap for everybody out there. So of course we are on word 6. Of course the first 5 words. Of course we started out talking about forgiveness.
Yes.
So kind of just give us a quick spiel about forgiveness. Of course, I think that Jesus was the perfect example of forgiveness.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, Jesus declares, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." So often, it's easy to hold on to the hurt.
Right.
Jesus had every reason to be upset, and yet in that moment, he still says, "Forgive them."
Right.
It's a reminder for us who sometimes carry hurt that it is our call, our mandate to release it.
Right. I think that's very good. Simply saying that even though somebody was hurting him, he was still able to say, listen, that's cool, that's fine, but I know what I came here to do.
That's right.
And I have to be the example for forgiveness. I think that was
that's good.
Very big of my Lord, if you will.
Yes.
And our next word was salvation.
Yeah. So this fellow, these two robbers, these two criminals on the cross beside Jesus, one is invited to join Christ in paradise. And even at the last minute, even though he was guilty, salvation was still available. We got to be reminded that we were guilty, and yet we were still offered salvation.
Absolutely.
And that it's never too late for
It's
somebody
never
else.
too late.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that it's never too late.
Never too
so
late.
no matter where you are in your season, if you feel like it's too late, it's never too late.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
The next thing, really big, which to me kind of ties into number one, compassion.
Compassion. So Jesus sees his mother and the disciple whom he loved, as the text says, and he sets them up for their future.
Yeah.
That mom, I know I'm leaving you, but I'm leaving you in the hands of one that I trust.
Absolutely.
And listen, man, I know we've been close, but I want you now to know I'm trusting you with my mother.
Right.
And he sees them even in his time of hurting. He has compassion on those that are yet hurting. There's a book called The Wounded Healer. That sometimes for those of us that are in ministry, or those of us that are called to ministry, or called just to be used by God, that sometimes we have to minister even while we're wounded.
Absolutely.
Jesus is wounded, and yet he's still ministering.
Absolutely. And again, to me, I always go back to Jesus is the perfect example.
Sure.
Because even we come to church a lot of times and we're wounded.
Yes.
But we still serve.
Absolutely.
And I think that, again, Jesus is the perfect example of what it looks like to serve through your hurt.
Yeah. And I'm glad you a little bit off subject, but I think sometimes people underestimate what it takes to serve in ministry, because if you're doing it correctly, it looks effortless. Right. It looks like everything is okay. Even in fasting, for people that fast, you're not doing it right if you're looking pitiful. Right? If you looking miserable, like that's just not, that's we're supposed to do. I mean, it's okay to suffer,
right?
But that's not the way you do it. And so sometimes we make serving look so easy. And Jesus is still having compassion in a very difficult moment.
Right, absolutely. All right, so then we move on to forsaken.
Yeah. Father, why hast thou
forsaken
me? Listen, I don't know anybody that hasn't felt that way at some point.
Right.
It feels like sometimes when everyone else is flourishing, everyone else is prospering, that you've been kind of left out there alone. And Jesus has a very human moment as he feels the separation between he and his Father. Why hast thou forsaken me? And it's okay for us to feel that way sometimes.
Right. I mean, I think Jesus needed to feel that, because I think that the cross is very symbolic of him needing to go through the things that he went through so that he could know how we felt.
Absolutely.
In those moments, because we do have moments where we feel like we've been forsaken, even though we know he's still there.
Right.
Jesus knew he was still there.
Yeah.
But it's that feeling of that, almost that disconnectedness
Yes.
that we feel. And so we do ask, God, like, why have you forsaken me?
Yes.
Like I said, we know that he's there, but sometimes that forsaken feeling does happen.
Absolutely, it happens.
And then we move on to last week was distress.
Yeah.
He said, I thirst.
He
was thirsty.
Yeah,
he was thirsty.
Yeah, thirsty. In need of life-giving fluids in a natural sense, but also thirsty for the connection, thirsty for a time back with his Father, thirsty to see this whole thing come to fruition. And sometimes this life is distressful. It is difficult, and we long for more. And we're going to find out today that if you hang in there, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. It's coming.
Well, speaking of today, we're going to move right on to word 6.
Word 6.
Word 6,
Yeah.
which is coming from, because y'all know this is Bible study. So, Pastor, do you have any bubble gum?
I don't have any
I don't
bubble
have
gum.
any either, but
No
we do
bubble
have
gum.
Bible. So we're going to go right on to John 19,
All
verse 30.
Yeah.
Where it says, when Jesus therefore had received the vinegar, he said, it is finished. And he bowed his head and gave up the ghost.
Yeah.
Word 6 is, it is finished.
It is finished. So let's can I jump in?
Oh, you'll help yourself. It's like
Thank you, ma'am.
double Dutch, yes.
So it is finished, right? So what does that mean? There's some things that really jump out contextually. He being Jesus has just said, I thirst, right? And then he takes this sip of the wine, and he says, "It is finished." Um, it's only 3 words, but there's some things that jump out. So it.
Right.
What's the it? He says, "It is finished." What's the
What
it?
is it?
Well, let's remember why we're here. Jesus is on the cross. He's being crucified. Um, the people think they're doing it because they deemed it necessary, but he has a purpose to fulfill. And we've shown some scripture along the way, Psalm 69 and other places where the fulfillment of prophecy is coming to pass. Well, same here. Even in "It is finished," Jesus is really quoting David in a time of his own suffering. But the it is the work of the cross,
Right.
the redemption, everything that he came to fulfill. I've fed the hungry. I have I've given water to the thirsty. I've healed the sick. But the real work of the cross is redemption.
Yes.
And after all of the suffering, after the beating, after the flogging, after the scourging, after the crown of thorns on his head, after all of that, it. You I think for us, for me, sometimes you got to be reminded of your it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's the why. Like, why am I here? It's
remembering your why.
Remembering your why,
Yeah.
right? So as parents, when you get frustrated with your children, you got to remember your why. On your job, you know.
Remember my why, Lord.
I feel like we struck a chord right there. Right. You got to remember your why. And so Jesus declares, I'm in my it. All of us have an it.
All of us have an it.
And I'll say more, but I want to hone in on the fact that when we say it is finished, know your it. Know why you're doing what you're doing. He says it is. I love language. I love words.
Words.
Right. So
words. I like words.
It is present tense. Right now.
Right now.
The it is presently. It's finished right now. It's happening in this moment. We're not dealing with the past. We're not talking about the future. Right here in this moment, it is. Scripture says he is a very present help in the time of trouble. When? In the present.
In the present.
You need to know that you've got a present God. And Christ says it is. What is it? It's finished.
It's finished.
I know a little bit about you. You ran track.
I did.
And so there's a difference between a sprint
yes.
And a long distance race, right? Sprints happen relatively quickly.
They gotta happen quickly, okay? Or you're gonna lose.
Right. You gotta move. But long distance races, 800s, miles, 1500, all of those things are longer.
Right.
And they come with some difficulty, but you got to stay in the race until it's finished. Marathons, 26.2 miles, I think. It may take a long time, but there's some satisfaction when you finish. Jesus declares it is finished. As a matter of fact, the Greek word is tetelestai. Come on, Bible scholar. Tetelestai. You familiar with that term?
Yes.
Yeah. So it literally means it is finished. It has a financial connotation. So it's a banking term.
Okay.
So it is finished or tetelestai also meant paid in full. I felt my shana.
Did he pay it all? Did he not?
That tetelestai means paid in full or the debt has been paid. And so Jesus says, I've paid it. And I can't speak for anybody else, but this is a celebratory moment for all of us that that the pain, the suffering, the sacrifice of Christ came to an end, and because he stayed, our place in heaven, our place in eternity, has been sealed, and that all happened because he stayed long enough to say, "It is finished."
Yeah.
I think for us, there's sometimes we've got to stay in it long enough to be able to say, "It's finished."
I think that is very good. And I think that saying it is right at that moment, not to say that he could not have said it before then.
Sure.
But I think that a lot of times as humans or even as Christians in this walk, we want to say it's finished before we need to.
Wow.
And sometimes, a lot of things go, they're incomplete because we're like, okay, well, I feel like I've done enough.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm done here. Again, Jesus is the perfect example. He could have said it. He did a lot of amazing things, but he knew that he couldn't say it until it was actually finished.
Right.
And I think, again, that we have to kind of take our cue, if you will, from Jesus and actually complete something so that we can say it's finished.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really...
Because, again, the satisfaction comes from knowing that you actually did everything that you could do, that you set out to, that you agreed to do.
Right.
Because Jesus agreed to do something when he came down here. And he didn't say it was finished until it was actually finished.
No, I totally agree. I love that. So in the garden, Jesus says, in the Garden of Gethsemane, he says, "Father, I would that this cup would pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine will be done." Okay, so if it's not going to be your will, Jesus, then you've got to see it through until it is finished. And how often for us, since we're beyond the sermon, how often for us, life application, do we, as you said so eloquently, how often do we quit before it's finished?
Yeah.
How often do we want the crown before we really finish the work of the cross?
Right.
And I hope that we're able to take from this that it's worth sticking it out.
Yes.
Because to your point, Jesus is the ultimate example. There were other people depending on Christ. If he quits, we lose. How often is it that there are other people
depending on us
that need us to stick it out?
Yeah.
Because if we don't make it, or if we give up, or if we don't display godly character, then they lose out as well. We have to understand sometimes it's bigger than us. As much as I'm suffering in this moment, it's really not about me.
Right. I think and I think it does go back to the remembering your why, because sometimes your why is not you.
Right.
Sometimes your why has nothing to do with what you're going to gain, but as opposed to you assisting somebody else in gaining something.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing we've been called to. We've been called to share this gospel, and sometimes, spoiler alert. Sometimes when you serve in ministry, you're not having the best day.
Right.
Sometimes you don't have the highest praise. Sometimes it literally is a sacrifice of praise. I admire you and Elder Cleveland and the twins and Jordan and Williams and all those that serve on our praise team. I mean, you all make it look effortless, but I'm sure there's Sundays that it's not exactly. It doesn't look. It's not as easy as it looks.
Yes, it would be accurate.
But there's a congregation waiting to be ushered in, and so we sometimes have to sacrifice for the sake of others and our Savior. Your words again, perfect example of what it is to suffer for someone else. He didn't need it. He didn't have to be saved.
Right.
But him staying long enough elevates him to a place at the right hand of the Father that we'll talk about maybe even next episode.
Well. And so I want to make note here in my notes where it says that him saying it is finished was not a cry of exhaustion.
Okay.
But more so but of completion.
Yes.
And again, of course, finish means complete.
Yes.
And so I want to kind of talk about. We talked about remembering your why. He voluntarily died.
Yes.
Again, but it was not until he completed everything he needed to do. And I guess for me, sometimes, I'm looking at all the projects that I have, and I've started them. And sometimes my husband's like, babe, you didn't finish so and so, or you started doing something, but you didn't finish it.
Right.
And looking at Jesus, I'm like, okay, but I'd be like, okay, it is finished. I'm crying literally from exhaustion because,
Right.
I'm tired,
Tired,
but
right.
not that it's actually being completed. And so my question is, what do you say to those people that are saying it is finished because they're exhausted as opposed to having completed something?
Right. That's good. That's good. By the way, finish those projects. Um, so there is some reward. There's some joy in seeing it all the way through.
Yeah.
Whether it's a workout that you suffered through, but you got to the end.
Yeah.
Whether you're walking, I just ran into Trustee Durant Bay and talked about how she just did a 10K. Yeah.
Yes, congratulations.
And, right,
yes.
but she can say that because
yeah, she finished it.
She finished.
She finished it.
It may have been exhausting along the way, to your point, but it's nothing like getting through it, because no matter how exhausting it is, no matter how much pain it is, it doesn't last always. Yes, Jesus hung 6 hours, but it wasn't 7 hours. Yes, it was difficult, but it comes to a conclusion, and the reward of seeing it all the way through. There's nothing like completion.
Nothing like completion.
Right? There's some things in my life that I have not completed, and the problem with it is, it's always there to remind you.
Yeah.
Like you always, like it every morning.
You can walk past it and you're like, oh man, I know I need to get that done. And it just sits there. And the longer you let it sit there, sometimes the worse it gets,
Absolutely.
if you will, or other things start to pile on top of it, and you start to, if you will, things kind of get out of priority.
Yes.
And so I think that I like the order of how Jesus did things, because he did things decent and in order.
Decent and
in order.
I was thinking about this word, and the greatest example for me was watching my son graduate from high school. I put, not alone, certainly, Rev C and I raised him together, but I put everything I had into raising him. That was my it. As I watched him walk across the stage, I was reminded how he was born with neonatal lupus. I was reminded of some of the difficult times in his life. I was reminded of some of the frustration that came along with parenting. But my whole goal was to get him to a place where he could take care of himself. And when I watched him walk across that stage, I was able to say, whew, it is finished. Because from there on out, it was on him.
Right.
For us, Jesus completed the work on the cross. And now it's on us.
Right.
Everything that needed to be done has been done. And I'm sure there was a sense of relief that, if nothing else, Christ had done his part. And now it's our time to do ours.
Absolutely. And so it talks about, of course, after saying it is finished, he gave up the ghost.
Okay.
And I would like to say, of course, again, we're talking about that, it wasn't from exhaustion that he said it is finished. It was out of completion. Him giving up the ghost, to me, also kind of looks a little bit like rest, if you will. And I say rest because a lot of times we want to say it's finished before we complete something, but then we also still want to rest before we actually get something finished.
Right.
And so what does that look like for us as believers, where we're wanting to take, I don't want to say undeserved rest, but undeserved rest, knowing that we have things that we need to do, and sometimes that redemption does not come until we've actually completed what we need to do. So what does that look like? Yeah.
That's a very good question. I don't want to give away the next episode, because when we talk about giving up the ghost, that's the seventh word. I now commend my spirit into your hands. But I struggle with resting. is something that Dr. Williams gets on me about all the time. And I think part of the reason why I struggle with it is I never feel like
You got it complete.
it is finished. And so it's difficult to fully rest without having that's part of the problem. Like if I know there's some lingering
Things
projects or things,
and
then,
I'm sure you're not alone there,
right.
because a lot of people are like, oh man, I didn't get good sleep last night.
Yeah.
I didn't, and it's because you have a lot of things in your day that you knew that you probably should have done, but they were not completed. So I think that that kind of alludes to the fact that you didn't get it completed. You can't say it is finished. It
until
is finished, but
right.
but you didn't get it completed.
Right, and so to the best of our ability, we want to bring things to completion, to tell us that, to be able to say it is finished, and not quit on the work before it's completed. Otherwise, you don't have the satisfaction of being able to say it is finished.
And also looking at that, sometimes that satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at everybody else be satisfied because they completed the things that they were supposed to do. Like, oh man, I don't feel fulfilled because I did not do this or I did not do that. And I think that. And again, I am old school, but I'm also a millennial, so I'm gonna bring my phone out.
All right.
So. I was talking to somebody last night, and they said the moment we feel fulfilled, we stop working to a degree. And I think that there are times where we feel like, okay, well, I did a little so-and-so. I folded up them 2 pieces of clothes. I feel a little, I feel fulfilled.
Right.
And we stop working.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, my tagline is Jesus is the best example, because he did not stop working. He did not feel fulfilled until he had completed everything he needed to do. And so for me, I think about my work day.
Yep.
I think about like, oh man, I got these 2 projects done, but I didn't feel fulfilled because I got a laundry list of things I need to do. And so again, you can't stop working.
Yes.
And you won't feel fulfilled until you've completed everything that you needed to complete.
So I don't know why you're doing this to me, but I'm gonna have a very transparent moment. A couple weeks ago, I had a chance to preach at New Macedonia Baptist Church, and I did their communion service, and I was introduced as Reverend Dr. Kenneth Rioland.
Well, doctor, hallelujah.
Here's the problem: I have not completed that work, and I felt away. I did not call myself doctor to them. They were very kind. I didn't tell them that. And I got a chance to talk to to Pastor Walker afterwards and say, hey man, I just want to be honest. I haven't finished the work. He said, oh, I didn't know. I got some choices to make.
Yeah.
I either finish it so that I can feel completed, or just go ahead and acknowledge that it's never going to happen. But I'm never able to rest because I know that's work that needs to be completed, and I don't want to be fake.
Right.
In my delivery or in my presentation. The same is true for us in our lives or in our ministry. There's some stuff that people may think about us that's not really true because we got some more work to do.
Right.
And it wakes me up, not wakes me up, but it's there with me every day.
Right.
That I don't want to portray something that I'm not. So I got some work to do, and maybe there's some others of us that have some work to do. So that we can be able to tell us that. Well.
I what you just said there about the fakeness. I think that a lot of times we put on, as humans, we put on that front where, oh, maybe somebody thought you finished it because you put on that front like you finished it. Again, Jesus is the best example.
Right.
He didn't have to put on the front.
Right.
He didn't have to pretend like he finished something that he didn't finish.
Right.
To me, that speaks to integrity.
Yes.
That speaks to the fact that if we say we're going to do something.
Yeah.
Again, Jesus didn't say it was finished until he completed what he agreed to do.
Wow. I think present day vernacular would say he kept it 100.
Didn't he keep it 100?
Right, because he legitimately did what he said. Right, he had the integrity to see it through. And listen, we ought not be fake about our Christianity and our walk. We can't pretend to be something, or we shouldn't pretend to be something that we aren't. Now in that walk, it's always evolving.
Right.
So you don't finish that, but there are steps along the way that we need to complete. For some of you that have never gone through new members training, you need to complete that so you can say it is finished.
It is finished. Or for those of you that need to sign up for those classes to finish that degree, you need to sign up before the deadline.
That's right. Or to get your license for the business, or to apply.
Pastor, I feel like you're trying to step on my toes.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying we want to make sure we get to a place where you can rest.
Where you can rest.
In what you've been called to do.
Yep. So, from a father's perspective, what do you? And I don't like to usually, talk about, well, what do we think God was thinking in that moment? Mm-hmm. But as a father, you know that you sent your son down to do something.
Yeah.
And the thing that like, oh man, I've been watching him this whole time struggle. Like you talked about, with your son,
True.
You've seen him struggle. You've seen him go through things. How do we perceive that God was feeling in that moment when Jesus said, "It is finished"?
Wow. So, what a great question. It takes me all the way back. So this is essentially Jesus's conclusion to his public ministry, right? It is finished.
Yeah.
But it starts way back when John the Baptist baptizes him, and there's a sound from heaven that says, "This is my beloved son, in whom I'm well pleased." I can only imagine that sense of pride initially, knowing what Jesus was taking on, is exponentially grown when he sees it to fruition and says, "It is finished." And because Christ is not only our Savior, but our big brother, if you will, he is the greatest example that the Father takes great joy, I believe, in us when we complete what we've been called to do.
Right.
And that's not just about dying and going on to heaven, but whatever the task is, whether it's raising the children or whether it's being a witness to somebody that needs to know about Jesus Christ, whatever it is, I want to be able to hear God say, "Well done, thy good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things, now I can make you rule over me." I want to hear "well done,"
right,
when it's my time, so that I can rest in my "it is finished." So it's important for us in this season to work while it's day, and sometimes that's gonna generate some suffering. But if we see it all the way through, we too can say, when it's all said and done, "It is finished."
I don't. This "it is finished" is really. I don't know. It's just sticking with me. It's almost like the goal setting. And I think we talked about that last year sometime, about the goal setting. Towards the end of the year, we talked about the goal setting.
Yes.
But then once you set the goal, you have to finish it.
That's right.
Because again, that fulfillment, or fulfillment, we're not gonna feel that. We're never going to feel that. We'll never be able to rest truly until you talked about the calling.
Yes.
And how there are things that God has called us to do that some of us, if we're honest, we're avoiding. And sometimes we're avoiding it out of fear. Sometimes we're avoiding it out of procrastination, because I think a lot of humans have issues with procrastination. It's me. I'm one of those humans.
Right.
But actually completing, and you told him, "Okay, Lord, I'm gonna answer the call." But then you get scarce, or you get sparse, if you will. I think that, and sometimes it's human nature, where things kind of get a little rough, they get a little hard. But looking at, going back and looking at verses 1-5, all the things that Jesus went through.
Yes.
He still stuck it out. Like you said earlier, he stuck it out to where, "Hey God, I told you I was going to answer the call.
Yes.
I told you that I was going to do this thing." And now he's saying, "Okay, it's finished. I did what I set out to do."
You know, as we conclude, I'm thinking of, for those that took on the task of giving up something for Lent. About a week ago, Reverend C I was taking some dinner to her, and she had a rough day, and I didn't know she had given up Cokes for Lent, but she had.
But you put the temptation in the
I
face.
did. I put a Coke. I brought a Coke to her.
It was cold, wasn't
and
it?
it was very cold, and she reached for it, and she was like, "Oh, I can't have it until next week." And now that we've gone through Lent, I don't know whether she's had one since then, but she can have it with a clear conscience because she saw it through.
Right.
And I use that as an example just to say sometimes we miss out on the joy of celebrating on the back end because we don't see our tasks through. Right. We don't follow it all the way to the end. And there's a great joy and satisfaction in knowing that you did what you were supposed to do, what you said you were going to do. You kept it 100.
No premature celebrations.
That's right.
Let's not celebrate prematurely. Let's finish that thing so we can have a true celebration.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, Pastor.
Well, listen, thank you. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Absolutely.
Did a great job. I thank God for a congregation that people are willing to step up when the time is right. We're building a culture.
Yeah. It is time this Sunday. I'm telling y'all. So we are going into the culture series. Yes. I am absolutely looking forward to it. And I know everybody talks about this cancel culture thing, but I'm excited for us to be able to, experience the word that you're gonna bring, talking about the term cancel culture.
Cancel culture. We jumped into it a little bit on Sunday, and we'll finish it on Resurrection Sunday. This coming Sunday, some of us call it Easter.
Well, he got up. That's all I know, okay?
Resurrection Sunday is coming up this coming Sunday. And we're going to see if we can get him up on Sunday morning.
Pastor, I think we can get him up. I think we can get him up.
I think we're going to give it a shot. Also want to shout out all of those that made contributions to our clothing giveaway. We partnered with a new partner, the Wider Circle, and thank God for those that brought it out, those that volunteered, as we continue to be a blessing to the community that we serve.
Absolutely. And just to plug for Easter, listen, bring somebody with you to church, okay?
That's good.
I know, we going out, we have our brunches, we do all that good stuff, but here's the thing, all of that is cute, all of that is fun, but guess what? We out here winning souls for Christ, and the big thing is bring somebody with you to church, whether they got their Sunday's best, whether they wearing sweatpants, whatever it is, bring them to church, all right?
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. We thank Sister T for being with us today. I am Reverend Kenneth Rioland Jr., the Peacock Proud Pastor of the Paramount Baptist Church. I love you with the love of Christ, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it, T, because here at the Mount, we are
one.
Have a great night.
Good night, y'all.
Welcome to Paramount Baptist Church. Here at the Mount, we are one. One faith, one seed, one family. Here are your weekly announcements. Great things are still happening as we forge forward with the 4 C's of creating, culturizing, connecting, and committing. So hold on and let's go. A new series has begun. Continue to join us each Sunday as we learn and grow through the preaching series, Cancel Culture. Check out the Beyond the Sermon podcast on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. with our Peacock Proud Pastor Rioland for great topics on lessons for living. Did you know that the Mount has its own prayer building? Stop by and check out all the services they offer. They will be open every Sunday, immediately following the worship service. In need of prayer? Join the Mount in Prayer conference call every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8:30 p.m. Trusting God through hard times. Ladies, you are encouraged to dial in every Thursday morning at 7 a.m. to the Women's Prayer Conference line for special prayer requests and blessings. Join our GAP ministry and let's talk about it on the first and third Thursdays at 7 p.m. Tune in this week on April the 6th to participate in Real Talk on the topic, Are you appeasing people and displeasing God? Good Friday service featuring the 7 last words will be presented on Friday, April the 7th at noon. Also, be sure to be in attendance on Sunday, April the 9th to experience the Resurrection Cantata at the 9 a.m. service. It's back! Beginning April the 16th, in-person Sunday school returns and will take place immediately following the 9 a.m. worship service. There will be classes for all ages. This concludes your weekly announcements. Sit back and prepare your hearts and minds to receive the Word of God. Let's go!